Let's get started. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome along and thanks for joining us today. So this technical update session is going to focus on OpenROAD, and it's going to feature an overview of all the latest product updates and features, plus an overview of the product roadmap. So here's the agenda, just to give you a breakdown. Like I said, this is all designed to keep you updated with the very latest product and company information from Actian. Like I said, today's focus on OpenROAD. We did have a session a few weeks ago which focused on Ingress, so if there's any further information you need from any of that, again, please enter it into the chat window or reach out and we can make sure that we get that to you. If you do have any more sort of in-depth, technical or strategy-focused questions, please do reach out to me or again drop a note into the chat window, and one of us will reach out to you on a one-to-one basis after the session. So to introduce the team on the call today, we've got our SVP of Global Engineering, Emma McGrattan, Alex Hanshaw, VP of Engineering, Chris Clark, who's going to be leading the OpenROAD session, who is our guru in all things related. There's Peter Lydon, our Principal Solutions Engineer, and of course myself. So Chris is going to run through, like I said, the overview and the life cycle and the roadmap, and he will have a couple of minutes afterwards for some Q&A. We'll also be introducing our friends from Capita, who are very kindly giving the real-world use case today. So that's Dan and Krishna. And then at the end, there'll be the Q&A session with our resident experts. Again, please just put any questions you want to you'd like to have answered in the chat window, and we can work through them as we go along. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Chris, and he's going to take you through the product overview and roadmap. Thanks, Chris.
Hello. Before we go any further, usual quick legal disclaimer. There are some dates in here and they're accurate at the time we're presenting them, but they are subject to change. So my name is Chris Clark, and today we're going to be looking at OpenROAD. We'll touch on EA and the roadmap. So we'll quickly look at the current status, where we are today. Then we'll look at release schedule when things are coming out, and then we'll touch on the new features that are coming out. So a quick introduction to OpenROAD. Many of you already know what it is, but in case you're new, OpenROAD is used to build database-focused applications. That's the core thing it was designed to do. And whilst you can write any sort of application in OpenROAD, because OpenROAD itself was written in OpenROAD, it really is focused on database relational applications. So this talk is really focused for developers. It is technical, but I will try and keep it open to all levels. OpenROAD is both a runtime and it's an IDE for developing applications focused on databases, and SQL support is built in. It's a core part of the language, and it's not an add-on like it is for Java. This means it's easy to write secure applications because it's designed for that from the ground up. It's actually more difficult to write an application that suffers from SQL injection with OpenROAD because of that. It's really, you have to go out of your way to do that. Our IT team takes security very seriously, and I'm sure yours does too. And an insecure application, at the best case scenario, it's going to cost you some money due to downtime or database corruption. And the worst case scenario, it's going to cost you millions in euros in fines, because if you get a GDPR violation, the fines ratchet up. Because it's focused on database applications development, developers are extremely productive. And when I talk to our partners, that's the primary reason they're using OpenROAD. Because it's easy to use, you can use smaller teams. Teams don't have to be as large compared with other languages. And the cost of a developer is usually the highest cost for your company. Smaller teams make communication much more easier and faster, and that again increases productivity. OpenROAD is really easy to learn, and we offer instructor-led training, but we also offer self-led training at Actian Academy, and that's included free with any OpenROAD support contract. We have a partner that hired a graduate fresh out of college recently, and this is during the shelter in place with COVID. And hiring and training a new person is difficult when it's remote at the best of times, but they're actually able to get them up to speed by following the 12 hours of content we have on Actian. And within about a week, they're actually able to make productive changes to real-world applications and just jump in and be a productive member of the team. We support multiple operating systems and multiple databases. And the reason that's helpful for our partners is that they usually still a preferred solution. Usually OpenROAD and ActionX predominantly on Windows and Linux, but occasionally when they sell their application, their customers have requirements that they can't change because of their IT department. Maybe they choose to use IBM AIX, or perhaps they're an Oracle shop. But OpenROAD makes it easy to switch and deploy and make that change of backend or OS painless. So you can develop on a cheap Windows and Linux machine and then deploy on the same application, the same binaries on an expensive Solaris machine. We'll quickly go over the components of OpenROAD, and there's really 4 things you can install. There's the development or workbench, and that's used to write or debug applications in 4GL. There's the runtime, which most users actually end up using. Most OpenROAD users are running your application. They don't really know they're using OpenROAD. Then there's the OpenROAD server, which is used to expose business logic, and you can take your existing business logic and expose it as a web service using OpenROAD server. Load and run is another form of the runtime, but it's Windows specific, and it's focused on making delivery of your application and your data files for your application simple and reliable. So if you want to make delivery of your application easier and automatic so that all users are running the latest version of your software by updating in a simple location, take a look at load and run. So I've grabbed a handful of some of the reference sites we have on Actian.com. Capture have some really different and very interesting use cases. And the reference case that I could talk about is related to local government. And you'll be hearing more about that shortly from Dan and Krishna, so I'm not going to steal their thunder. The Revenue Commission is another government use case. And you may have heard John's session in the previous roadmap session for ActionX and Ingress last month. Ireland's customs and excise taxes are handled with OpenROAD and Ingress. They rely on OpenROAD and Ingress for a critical piece of infrastructure for the country's economy. Lufthansa's flight planning system Lido is built on OpenROAD, and all Lufthansa flights are run through that system. Planes literally don't take off unless Lido's running and a planning session's been complete. Lufthansa also sell Lido to a number of other airlines, so you might not have been on a flight in the last 12 months, but there's a really good chance that your previous flight was controlled by an OpenROAD application, whether you flew with Lufthansa or not. Airbus rely on OpenROAD for testing. So if you've ever sat on an Airbus aircraft, the components used to construct that aircraft all ended up being tested by a system developed in OpenROAD. And you can't just buy an off-the-shelf system to do that, and OpenROAD makes it cost-effective to do so. Right, we're going to do a quick whistle-stop tour of OpenROAD for the last 7 years. Our customers, they want and they expect long support life cycles. Many government agencies only allow upgrades at particular times, usually on a very long schedule. And there are all sorts of reasons for that. But because of that, we need to make sure that we ensure we have long-term support releases for that. Conversely, we've got some partners that need new features, whether it's for business reasons or legal reasons. So we have to ensure we're able to get new features delivered in a timely manner. We have a couple of ways of doing that. The first one is to do short-term releases like OpenROAD 6.0 and OpenROAD 11.0 and 11.1. And that means you can just grab the latest release and get the features you need. And the Unicode support was one of the big reasons why OpenROAD 6.0 was delivered early. We made that available to partners because we had a partner that needed Chinese support. And then we also had a customer that needed UTF-8 support. And most of the big features we work on are for and with partners. So if you're facing a design challenge with OpenROAD, come talk to us, either me directly or the services team or your sales contact. 6.0 was a joint partner services engineering project, and it helped improve the final Unicode support that we added in 6.2. Some features, in fact, a lot of features are actually able to backport, and we do that via patches. We have an automated system that ensures that we can get stable releases out without regressions. That leverages some of the 6.2 tests and enhancements made for testing. So if you're having a struggle with testing, take a look at what was added in 6.2 because it can greatly reduce the amount of manual testing you do. OpenROAD 6.2's latest patch includes over 100 enhancements, which again is why we're able to do things either in a new release or backporting. So a quick whistle-stop tour of the big features. In 6.0 we had transparent Unicode support, and that's what it sounds like. You can get Unicode support for free without making huge code changes. We had one partner that had a 2 million line application, and they were to make 20 lines of code changes to get Unicode support. 64-bit support was a big thing in 6. We had one partner who's constantly developing their application, and they had one job that the data set had finally got to the point where it was actually taking up all of their memory, because they were doing in-memory processing, because OpenROAD lets you do that, or you can stream it. And they were able to just deploy the new version without making any code changes and process all the data, and whilst they're carrying on building new features. Installable patches are a way of getting the latest version of OpenROAD patched on your machine. So if your machine doesn't have OpenROAD, you can install the latest patch, and it installs the base release core functionality and the patch at the same time. You don't have to install base release and a patch. Already touched on load and run. 11.0 and 11.1 were released just last year, the big version number jump, but the reason for that was we want to synchronize our release cycle with Ingress to make it really clear what version is compatible with each other, and also what the release dates and the release cycles are. The big things in that were we got a lot of stuff for free from Ingress. We've always supported dates past 2038, but OpenROAD itself would not run if you started to run it in 2039. So we got that for free from Ingress. The JSON support was added, as well as Json Rpc and Webgen, and we're going to talk more about those in a few minutes. OpenROAD 11.2 is coming out this year, and again we'll get into more specifics on the dates in a minute. We're basically going to follow the release schedule for Ingress and ActineX now, and again we'll talk about some of those new features in a few minutes. So for OpenROAD and Enterprise Access, they're both going to come out on the same day for Linux and Windows. That will be about 2 months after the Linux release for ActineX and a month after the Windows release for ActineX. For Unix, it's going to be the same dates. We're going to follow the schedule for Ingress exactly. And so now we'll start looking at some of the features that came in 11. So JSON, or JavaScript object notation, if you're not familiar with that, it's basically a serialization or a storage format that's based on Java. It's everywhere today. It's pretty much ubiquitous, and it's become a de facto standard now. Because it's based on JavaScript, web browsers just have support for it out of the box. When we had the fires last year in California in 2020, there was a lot of interest in up-to-the-minute air quality information. The air quality was so poor here that it wasn't actually safe to be outdoors a lot of the time. So there was often a lot of interest in finding out, well, what is the air quality now? Air quality sensors are not cheap, and so most people don't have them. And so looking this stuff up online or writing an application to suck that down and trigger warnings was really quite important. Every single endpoint I looked at that offered air quality was JSON based, and so I had to process JSON. Luckily, we already had that support. We handle JSON in both OpenROAD and Ingress. So OpenROAD allows you to both consume and create and manipulate JSON objects. And it's a one-line command to serialize to and from an object in OpenROAD. Ingress also has JSON support, so you can store your JSON payloads and you can actually query them as well. The OpenROAD implementation of JSON is superior to our XML implementation. It's actually much faster for complicated objects, and it's also allows you to do things that we can't handle in our current XML support, like circular references, nested references, and the subclassing support is much easier as well. Once we had JSON support, that was basically the on-ramp then for Json Rpc. So Json Rpc allows any client or to access any server and make procedure calls. It basically builds upon our existing OpenROAD server support, and OpenROAD can access a non-OpenROAD server. So maybe it's a Java server, maybe it's Python, maybe it could be any implementation on the server. And conversely, you can use any client to access the OpenROAD server now. Any client or language that supports HTTPS and JSON can be used. As I touched on earlier, subclassing support is super easy with the JSON Rpc support we have. In the old, which we still support, legacy OpenROAD server, you required lots and lots of SCPs to wrap subclasses, and that's no longer required. So that SCP proliferation is no longer required. And Byra parameters are supported. We have an extension on top of Json Rpc, so you can write traditional pure Json Rpc functions, or you can wrap your existing business logic without any code changes and get a secure and safe microservice. So you probably have decades of investment in your business logic today, and you can expose that very simply and have control over what is and isn't exposed. We have a full set of demos. They're all on GitHub. I encourage you to take a look at that. They're all easy to use. And because you can expose existing business logic, it's really easy to get started. We have a partner in a government agency that's able to reuse business logic from ABF and expose it via OpenROAD as a microservice. In their use case, they have a pretty simple, almost copy and paste operation to make that happen. So now we had talked about JSON and Json Rpc. I want to start talking about web apps. So Json Rpc gives us a chance to support web apps. So applications actually run in the web browser using HTML and JavaScript or HTML5. Browser apps are really easy to deploy, so there's no real deployment issue for you in terms of versioning. You deploy to a server, and then all clients get the new version straight away. They don't have to install anything, it's just there. Writing new web apps that access OpenROAD logic isn't for free. It's going to take you some time, and your OpenROAD developers may or may not have those skills yet, so they may have to pick those skills up. So the new feature we have is in 11 is Webgen, and the idea is to take your OpenROAD 4GL code using your existing OpenROAD developers, take that application and deploy either pieces of it or the whole thing to the web. And the idea is that you can use the same source code for both your full desktop application that you're already using, and perhaps take small pieces that you expose as a web service or a web app. The screenshot here is a really simplistic application we use internally for looking at installation IDs. Not everyone has OpenROAD installed at Actian, and being able to access some internal utilities is really helpful. We're able to take a couple of our applications that we use in support and engineering and get them to the web. And then we still have the full desktop application for the people who want all those features. So if you're being asked to offer a web access, an app or a service to your existing application or your business logic, we want to work with you. Okay, so now we're going to start looking at the new features. And this is the new features in 11.2 for OpenROAD. So the primary objectives we had were to synchronize our release with ActionX and Ingress. Again, we want to make it easier to understand what versions are supported and what the release cycle is. What's the life cycle? We want to improve how OpenROAD can work with other applications. And then we're going to continue to build on Webgen to expose more features from OpenROAD. So OpenROAD is almost never ever used alone. It's always used with at least one or two other applications, and you'll see an example of that in a few minutes with Capita. And so we have to support other systems, and typically that's done via standards, whether it's some kind of document protocol, whether it's the API. So we need to look at anything that's standards based when we're looking at that. In terms of protocol support, typically when dealing with other applications, many of our partners deal with some kind of file. They're either sending a file or consuming a file, and that works great. But you need to be able to use things over the network. And in the old version of OpenROAD, you could definitely automate things, but it required a lot of work, and it's probably platform specific. So we've had requests for accessing HTTP servers, either for doing a web download or doing some kind of web upload. We've had requests for web scraping, as well as calling REST services over HTTPS. And we already talked about my example I had from last year with air quality, but you can probably think of something that you've either been asked to do or you need to do today. There are web services for all kinds of stuff. If you want to access a SOAP service with XML, that's a typical use case. Typically sending emails is a requirement, and again, it was possible with the old version, but now we have a portable non-platform specific version. And we also have a lot more support for file transfers over FTP, secure FTP, SCP to SSH servers. So that will be coming in 11.2. So the new architecture we'll be looking at is not that dissimilar to what we had before, but OpenROAD clients and also the server could also access other JSON Rpc servers. They can also access REST services and web browsers, or using from either standalone or built on technology based from OpenROAD can access OpenROAD server, and then from there you can access Avalanche, ActionX, Zen, Oracle, or even SQL Server. We've had lots of requests for making the transition from ABF to OpenROAD easier. We previously had a system called TransForge, and this is not that. TransForge was a service. This is a component that's part of OpenROAD 11.2 that developers can use. It's made for developers, and the idea is that you can get immediate results from your ABF forms. I want to set some expectations. It's focused on the form. Code is going to require some more work, but it's a quick way to get you started from what you already have. So this is the example I have to show you. It's a typical green screen application on the left, and then the OpenROAD frame on the right is what you get after literally clicking a button. The system uses frame templates. So you have a modicum of control over this, so you can, without writing any code, apply your company or application styling to it. And you don't need to make changes to the form, but you probably will do, because your screen state with a monitor is much different these days compared to the green screen. So the idea is you'd almost certainly take this and do something else with it. This is the same output, but run through Webgen. So in less than a minute, you can have your old ABF form displayed in a web browser, on your desktop, on your phone. And it's great for doing quick mock-ups and figuring out, well, what pieces do I need to move, and which screens are we going to tackle. So Webgen, as already mentioned, builds on top of the Json Rpc support we have. The new features for 11.2 is going to include the HTTP REST support that we just looked at for the desktop. So you'll be able to do the same logic in desktop or your web apps. And we're also going to start building on functionality that isn't yet moved across. For example, BIOS support is coming up next. So that's where we are with OpenROAD. That's where we've been, where we're going. And I'd like to re-invite you to get in touch if you're facing challenges, because I want to see if we can help. I love working with partners. Partners are usually where we get most of our big functionality ideas from. And Capita, one of our trusted partners, and you're about to see one of their new deployments where they worked with Action so they could come up with a game plan for what they needed. They had a couple of requirements, and they'll get into that. They were one of our early adopters of .NET Core, and that only came about because they worked closely with us. So we can give them early access. So if that sounds of interest to you, I'd love to work more closely with you. And with that, back to you, Paul.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Great stuff. I've seen. I know there's a few questions coming in. We're gonna wait on those and address them at the end, if that's okay with everybody. Because right now we're going to hand over to our friends from Capital One, who are going to take us through their use case, as Chris mentioned. And yeah, over to you.
Welcome. My name is Dan Chapman, and I'm a technical solution architect. And with me is Krishna Kumar, who is a senior development manager. We both work for Capital One. Capital One touches nearly every element of local government and housing sectors, with leading edge software innovation, including software offerings in education, housing, and revenues and benefits. Capital One has worked with Action for over 2 decades, and hopefully for many years to come. We started over 20 years ago with OpenROAD and Ingress, and have progressed to ActionX. The main software we use from Action is ActionX, the transactional database, and OpenROAD, the 4GL rapid development tool. We chose this combination to quickly build out functionality in a feature-rich toolkit. Action works closely with us so that we can make the most of these tools and produce great software offerings for our customers. Capital One has over 130 local authority customers using our products with ActionX and OpenROAD at their core. Our main offering using Action is our revenues and benefits product. This product allows local authorities to manage and receive council tax, business rates, and housing benefits. It's critical the software is performant and secure, as any issues or mistakes are not only costly to the local authority, but also cause distress to their citizens. Imagine if you're on a low income and the local authority didn't pay your rent as there was a software glitch. I'll now hand over to Krishna, who will give an overview of our product.
Thanks, Dan. Capital One is building a new Azure hosted API that will serve all our customers. We have partnered with Action to help us achieve that goal. Capita One is building this API to help us provide an industry-leading technical framework that all our products will depend on in the future. The API will also allow all of our customers to have access to their data via a highly performant and secure framework. As the API is core part of our future products, we have worked closely with Actian to make sure it's making the most of their great software. I'll now go a little bit deeper to show you how we use ActianX and OpenROAD in our new API framework. As you can see from the diagram, the Capita One API is hosted in Azure, makes a secure connection to our on-premise customers via a technology called as Azure Hybrid Data Connection. Via this technology, we are able to directly call ActianX database, and we can call the OpenROAD runtime, which allows us to run code. The flexibility of Actian software has enabled us to reuse large parts of our existing code base that we have created over the last 20 years. And we have an option to bypass our code to make direct calls to the ActianX server. Actian has worked closely with us to help us integrate the various technologies. These integrations have allowed us to substantially increase the flexibility of our products and greatly increase the pace at which we can deliver improvements to our customers. During the development of this framework, we did come across two challenges. First one being calling the ActianX server via the .NET Core and directly calling the OpenROAD application server from Azure. Next, we will walk you through these challenges to show how Actian acted quickly to help us. I will hand back over to Dan, who will go through in more detail about these challenges. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you. So Azure's platform as a service offering are under constant change. This can lead to quickly receive new features, but it can also mean the way you integrate with it often changes too. During the development of our new API, changes to the Azure functions meant that any new function that was built must use .NET Core instead of .NET. This change meant that we needed a new Actian client DLL that's compatible with .NET Core. This change in requirements for the Azure functions created a huge challenge for us. We reached out to Actian for support. Actian responded quickly and worked closely with our development team to understand the challenge. Once the challenge became clear, Actian suggested they build a new compatible client DLL for us to use so we could deliver our product to our customers. We were concerned that as we were due to deliver our product in 6 weeks, we might miss our product delivery date. But Actian came through for us, and they worked long hours to build an alpha version of the client within 2 weeks, which we could use to continue development on whilst they moved to general availability. We managed to hit our product delivery deadline, thanks to Actian. We managed to deliver highly reliable, secure, cloud-hosted API that works seamlessly with ActianX. For the second challenge, it was more of an interesting integration between various technologies to reach a goal of opening up over 20 years of our code base to our new APIs. Over the last 20 years, Capita One has had a team of more than 30 developers building out our products in OpenROAD. This has created a very large set of functionality that we'd want to reuse in our APIs. The challenge was to expose this functionality securely and keeping it working to a high level of performance. We've contacted Actian and iterated through a few ideas with them, which, as you can imagine, during the current climate, was quite difficult. But we managed to workshop via Teams and Zoom. The various Actian teams were also very helpful in outlining many of the different solutions to our challenges. In the end, we chose one that worked for us. It reused many of the existing API framework components. The solution was a fairly new feature in OpenROAD application server that allowed a Json Rpc request to be passed through to OpenROAD. Actian provided an example of the solution which already existed in their public Git repository for anyone else to use. And then they worked closely with our development team to fine-tune the solution to our exact requirements in a proof of concept. We've now built this proof of concept into our new API, and it is performing great. Krishna will now sum up what we have discussed today.
Thank you, Dan. So in summary, We've really enjoyed working with Actian over the last 20 plus years. OpenROAD has propelled our products to be highly performant and secure. Over the years, hundreds of developers have grown their careers whilst working on products using OpenROAD. Some moved away, some returned. ActianX has also grown over the years, being refined over and over again to its blistering speeds it achieves today. We are still learning on new ways to make the most of this technology, of course, with the great support from Actian. We have faced some interesting challenges over the last 6 months using both ActianX and OpenROAD, but Actian have been there to support us when we needed them. Building this new API has been a great experience for us at Capita One. The API will also become a core building block for us to build on in the future with Actian at its core. That brings us to the end of this presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Great stuff. Thanks very much to the guys from Dan and Krishna for that use case. Really useful stuff. Now we're going to move on to the Q&A session. So I see that the Q&A window has been filling up. So I'm going to hand over to Emma now to lead the questions in the panel.
Okay, great. And thanks again, Dan and Krishna. That was fantastic. Really insightful, and great to hear that the support of the team was provided in the way that one would expect it from the OpenROAD and Ingress teams. So a lot of questions came in through the chat. Let's start with the first one. I hope Chris and Derwin, you're ready for this. So the first question is, will there be support for YAML?
Oh, we haven't had any requests for that yet. So YAML's a superset of JSON. So there's partial support now, but it's not on the roadmap, but I'll think about it. Please reach out to me so I can get more details on your use case, because that would be interesting.
Yeah, and let's get a Jira ticket entered for that one. Okay, next one. What are the key limitations of Webgen? Noting the point that you made about extending additional OpenROAD features.
Oh boy, okay.
Features, yeah.
Okay, so right now, the biggest one is that we don't support multiple frames. So it's basically for single frame applications, which does fit in with HTML5 apps, single page apps. We have some plans on getting around that. The buyer support is kind of step one for that. There's definitely some differences in display formats that we're still working on, but that's on the roadmap. The obvious thing is we have no intention or support for SQL statements. The expectation is that you have to have a partitioned application, and then you're going to make a request to a web service. Automating that partitioning, we can't figure out how to do that. I don't see that ever happening. So partitioning your application, if you don't already have that, is probably the biggest thing you need to do, and that's partly why we see people doing small small scale downs with this kind of stuff. You take your big application, you either leave it alone or tweak it and then start to partition it, and then take pieces of that for the web service.
Yeah, I can extend some comments on that. Chris mentioned that we had a partner take a person who was a recent graduate from college, and they took the OpenROAD class, and they basically went from no knowledge of OpenROAD to being able to take a standard OpenROAD client server application and build it and use it. Now, what we asked them to do as part of the work we were doing was they took that client server application, and we wanted to see how hard would it be for a person to take a client server application and to essentially partition it into a thin client piece that ran in an OpenROAD runtime and a server piece that ran under the OpenROAD server. And they were successfully able to do that in a short period of time. And so the next thing we asked them to do was, it was an application that consisted of, I believe, 3 or 4 separate frames. And so what we asked them to do was, we described an idea. Instead of running the application in multiple frames, we had them restructure the application and run it in a single frame, but use named subforms to basically hide the the virtual frames. And they were able to build that application successfully, and it performed really well. So we took that that demo, and we're in the process right now of adding logic to Webgen to take that application and basically turn it from a 4GL application into a JavaScript HTML5 application. So we haven't completed that work, but we're getting close to being able to do that. And so the whole idea was to have a series of sample applications, demo application that goes from a client server application to a partitioned application to one that we can then use Webgen to convert to something that can be deployed. And part of that was the original application used the remote server call4GL interface. And what we did was we showed them how they can convert the call4GL calls, which access the Openoad server, to Json Rpc requests. And the reason we wanted to do that was so we'd be able to use Webgen to transpile that application into a Webgen application. So that was very successful, and we're in the process of using that to take the next step. So
great, thanks, Derwin. Appreciate the additional information. The next question is somewhat related. James Ryan has asked, can I effectively auto-convert an existing Openoad application to be browser-based using Webgen and then throw away the OpenROAD application?
Chris, you want to take that, or you want me to
try? So it's not seamless yet. So I don't think, I hate saying this, but I don't think anyone's going to be successful in just hitting a button and having it convert. It's going to require some work because of the things that we're working on. In theory, you could throw it away, yeah, but you still need the OpenROAD business server logic, because that's where the core of your logic is going to be. But it does mean you don't have to worry about deploying those fat clients anymore. If you still need to do fat clients, your load and run is awesome at doing that, or you can even stick with the old one. But yeah, the hope is that you could start deploying more of your customers, your end users, with the web browser.
Yeah, the biggest thing is partitioning the OpenROAD application. So if you have a client server application, the client server application is going to issue SQL to the DBMS. Webgen doesn't support SQL access. So the first step would be to take your existing client server application and partition it into an application, a 4GL application that accesses the OpenROAD server. And then the OpenROAD server portion of the application is the piece that actually talks to the Ingress or the enterprise access DBMS. So then the next step is you have a thin client, which probably originally used the call4GL method to access the OpenROAD server. And it's really simple to use the Json Rpc method instead of a call4GL method. In fact, it's a lot more flexible to call the OpenROAD server. And then you're in a position to potentially transpile that 4GL client into something that can be deployed on Webgen. There are a number of features in OpenROAD that we don't currently support, but we have ongoing activity in addressing those. We have a document that describes what is supported and what is not supported, and that is just an ongoing thing that will continue to improve.
Great. Thanks again, guys, for thorough answers. Next up, we have a question from Adrian Williamson asking, what's the roadmap for ActiveX controls in OpenROAD 11x and beyond?
Oof. Okay, so we actually have in 11.2 there is no firm project to change that right now. We have been looking at .NET Control support, but that's not in 11.2. That's a future thing. So if you've got specific issues coming up, get in contact with us, because for the .NET piece, we're going to want to work with partners who actually have real world stuff they want to deploy.
Right. Yeah, I think that one's more about deprecating the ActiveX controls, right, and finding a way forward. Okay, so we'll set that up as a topic of conversation. The next question is a follow-on from Adrian, saying, will OpenROAD 11.2 give us full access to the SQL syntax of ActiveX? 11.2.
There's a couple of things that I didn't cover in there. So there's a couple of things we've added right now. So some simple stuff like create table if none exists, drop if none exists. So we are starting to add some of that stuff. It's not going to be in the initial GA release though. So there's just going to be, I think, 3 things we've added in 11.2 for GA. But we're going to continue to do that throughout the year because again, we're really keen on delivering new functionality in patches. But we have to do that in a stable way.
We do have a series of JIRA tickets open that have identified things we want to add to OpenROAD to bring it in line with the features in Ingress. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to get on the same release cycle as Ingress. We're now building on the same Ingress runtime as is current, and so we've identified a list of things that we'd like to add to just to take advantage of the capability that Ingress has.
If there's any specific syntax that you'd like us to prioritize, please do get in touch with us. We can make sure that anything that you need for your business, we can put first in that list rather than just trying to go through the list of things that we need to catch up on. Right? So we want to prioritize the things that you need.
Thanks, Alex. So Chris and Dermot, there's kind of a follow-on suggestion from Nick. I think it's Nick Denning. It says Nick D. And that is, well, could you just put that stuff into a stored procedure and then execute it on the server side? The piece is not supported.
Yeah, that is the typical workaround for back-end parser statements that aren't available in either ABF OpenROAD or ESQL. It's the usual workaround that clients use for that.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, does OpenROAD support Oauth natively? Chris? Did we lose Chris?
Can you hear me now?
Mute.
Yeah, now we can hear you. Yes.
I got disconnected. So I got disconnected when we were talking about SQL enhancements. So I'm really sorry I missed a whole bunch of stuff. I was just going to quickly.
It's okay. Derwin stepped in and then Alex added. So we're all good on that one. So the question you just missed is, does OpenROAD support Oauth natively?
It does not, no. That's in terms of authentication with the web server, that's something your web application is going to have to take care of. And then the authorization for your web server is how you tackle that.
Okay, great, thanks. Next one, are there examples of Ingress and OpenROAD running in containers such as Docker? And I guess we need to update GitHub with some examples there, right?
We don't have any yet, but our QA.
There is some work on that, Chris. Chris, I did a lot of work around how you can set up ActiveX within Docker. One of the there's a number of things that where you can run into trouble there that Chris I covers. I believe he has a knowledge base document. There may be something in Academy already. I can check this out for you. But the first thing is the instances need to have a different installation ID when you bring them up, or because the network stack is shared across Docker instances, and you end up with conflict on the ports. So, and the other thing is licensing depends on a MAC address being a known value if you have a license for a host. So Chris has a Chris, I created this script that will allow you to make sure that your instances spin up with a known MAC address, and each new instance takes an additional bump on that MAC address, so that you have this known series of MAC addresses, and you can actually generate licenses for your maximum number of instances that you wish to be able to run, and license those individually. So as they spin up, you end up picking up one of those licenses from a concatenated license file. So there is some good material on how you can make use of ActiveNX within a Docker container. I don't think we've done anything specific around OpenROAD, but I wouldn't expect any runtime issues there. It's the use of ports and licenses that were known issues if you're just trying to get started with Docker.
Yeah, just to add to that, so yeah, we have a lot of stuff internally. In terms of OpenROAD, we're actually hoping to have a setup with Tomcat so that the OpenROAD server can be deployed quickly and easily, but that's not on GitHub yet. So.
Okay, great. Sounds like we've got lots of material we can use for future tech update events. So great questions, really appreciate them. So the next one was a follow-on question from James Ryan. James, sorry, I'm asking these in order, and getting back to the Webgen. So James has asked, how maintainable is the generated HTML, CSS, JavaScript from Webgen? If we did want to throw away the OpenROAD element.
Okay, it is completely unmaintainable. We treat it like a binary in the same way that you wouldn't edit an image after you built it. We don't encourage anybody to edit the output from that. Some of it looks kind of clean, so you could be tricked into thinking it's maintainable. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay.
It's from a debugging standpoint, the 4GL code and the JavaScript, the generated JavaScript code, you could be fooled into thinking it can be supported, because one of the things, I'll give you two examples. First thing that happens in the 4GL code is we strip out all the comments before we do the transpilation. However, as part of transpiling the 4GL code into JavaScript, we do put JavaScript comments that reference the 4GL line numbers. And then when you actually look at the generated JavaScript code, it resembles the 4GL code to a large degree. But I would treat the generated JavaScript code as object code.
Okay, thanks, Derwin. Okay, and the final question that's been submitted through Q&A is, do the newer versions of Opennode IDE have dark themes?
No, we hadn't thought about doing that. So no, the IDE it has the same color scheme as before.
Okay, thanks. Oh, we got another one added after the fact.
Yeah.
So you can't manage the look and feel of the web app once it's generated?
Right now, it's done through some CSS. So I think the question is asking, can you change the CSS and tweak it afterwards? No, we actually experimented with the initial version by doing that, but there were some maintainability issues with the compilation. So some of the information leaks into the HTML5 that gets generated. We'd like to figure out how to do that, but right now it's a transpile each and every time.
Okay. Looks like we need to have another session on this in the future, Chris and Derwin. So really appreciate the work that went into preparing for today's presentation. But it sounds like there's a lot of interest in Webgen, right? So I think we should set something up around that.
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thing to that last question. So one of the things we worked kind of hard to do is to when we generate the HTML and the CSS, we try to faithfully generate the look of the original 4GL application. So if you have an application and you've applied, say, your company standards to that 4GL application, when we generate the Webgen application, it should look pretty close to the way it looked before. And so we'd work kind of hard to make that happen. It's not going to look exactly the same, but if you've got an application, you will recognize that it's using your company standards. But that's as far as we've gotten at this point in time. And as I mentioned before, Webgen is an ongoing project. So we literally on a weekly basis, we're making enhancements and adding things. We have our list of features that we'd like to implement, and those are being addressed on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to pick it up and work with us, get in touch if you see something that isn't working the way you expected. We want to hear about it.
And the other thing I want to mention is Chris showed that little Webgen application that takes a alphanumeric English port number and converts it into the numeric port number. And the history of that one was it originally started out as a C application, and then a couple of our colleagues took that C application and converted it into an OpenROAD application, and then we used that OpenROAD 4GL application and transpiled it into a JavaScript application. So really, Webgen is really intended for greenfield projects, not so much existing projects. And that's all I had, Emma.
Thanks, Derwin. Okay, one last thing. This one is probably for Alex. Oh, no, it's not. I'm sorry. It's for Chris and Derwin. How easy is the migration from OpenROAD 6.2 to OpenROAD 11.1?
I think it's easy. We've had a couple of partners who took their images from 6.2 and deployed them in 11. We do recommend people recompile, but image compatibility is actually there in 11.0 and 11.1. And we did an extensive alpha and then a beta last year. So I think you'd be pleasantly surprised.
Okay.
Yeah,
and then,
I would say
ahead,
that it's fairly transparent. So you can take a 6.2 image file and deploy it in 11.1 runtime. We did find at least one problem where that's been addressed, as we haven't released a patch for it, but we did detect a difference between in 6.2. Depends on how the application was compiled. So if you have an OpenROAD application where you created 6.2 images, which obviously run against Ingress 10.2, and then you take that same OpenROAD source and you use 11.1 to compile an image, 11.1 image file, then you'll be able to, there is a difference, and we've identified that, and there's a fix that's been submitted. So there is a possibility that we can find differences like that, but as we find those, we treat those as bugs. So it's our intent right now to allow you to take a unmodified 6.2 image file and run it in an OpenROAD 11.1 or 11.0 or 11.2 environment. We don't recommend it, but it's our intent to treat that as a bug if we find things like that.
Great, thanks, Derwin. Okay, so there was one other question and that had been submitted that I answered actually live, I'm sorry, through the chat function, and that was, it was suggested 15 years ago that OpenNode might replace the database procedure language. Has that idea been abandoned? And one of the things that Alex talked about in his webinar a couple of weeks ago was the new support we've added for UDFs, and that we can have support for SQL, Python, and JavaScript UDFs. And in thinking about this today, Adrian, because you suggested it, I'm thinking that it'd be amazing if we could put OpenROAD in there as well. So I'm going to get the OpenROAD and Ingress teams to noodle over that idea and see if we can do something with it. So with that, I think we're almost out of time. So what I want to do is a little bit of self-promotion. The next webinar is on Monday, the 22nd of February, and I'm going to be talking about Actian Avalanche and an Actian Vector. And for those of you not familiar with it, Actian Avalanche is our hybrid cloud data warehousing platform. It's a combination of the vector database together with the Actian integration technologies delivered as a fully managed service across AWS, Azure, and we're in the process of adding Google Cloud. That's in beta right now. It's an amazing piece of technology. It works beautifully with the rest of our technology stack, and it's priced very attractively. For people that are looking for a move to the cloud, it's definitely something you should take a look at. And I will say that, if there was sufficient interest, the Actian X or the Ingress engine could be added to the platform if we got interest from the customer expressed in that. Up until now, it's mostly been a BYOL push for Ingress customers moving to cloud. But I think when you see what we've done here, it could be something that's quite interesting. So I'd encourage you, if you have an hour that morning, to come along and to listen to what it is and to see a live demo. So thanks everybody again for your time today. We really do appreciate you showing up, and we appreciate your interest in OpenROAD. As you can tell from Chris and Derwin, they're both very knowledgeable and both very interested in driving the OpenROAD technology set forward based upon real world input, right? They're not doing anything that's speculative. It's based upon requests coming in from customers and from partners, and they'd love to interact with you. So if you want to reach out to Chris and to Derwin, they'd be delighted to continue the conversation. So with that, I'll thank you all for your time today. Anything to add, Paul?
Yeah, it's just to say that we'll be reaching out in the next few days. This session has been recorded, so we'll reach out with a link to that. There was some links mentioned to GitHub, and also copies of the slide will be available. And so there'll be that, and also the details of how to register for the next event, which you have covered in full. So thanks to everyone.
Thanks again. Cheers, guys.